Hi everyone, welcome to another live chess video. This is Canon Master Isaac Steinkamp from the Chess Summit Network, and for today I'm back with another G15 game, playing against a pretty respectable opponent, about 1800, and hopefully we're going to learn some things today. Um, my opponent's not exactly playing a very ambitious structure. That will change if he does decide to take on c4, but we'll see what he decides to do. He plays knight to f6. I'll play bishop to g2. e6. I already don't really care that much for black structure. I honestly think black gets a better game with the bishop on f5. Although some people disagree because they think the bishop gets kicked around easily from here. But okay, I guess my opponent just wants a mainline Catalan. So what I'll do is I'll probably go into a Catalan, but I want to make his... Oh. So my opponent decides not to go for the standard Catalan lines. I thought he was going to go straight for it. But here he decides to go ahead and take on c4, which is unusual because usually you want to take on c4 before you play a move like e6. So already, I'm a little bit suspicious. I could play knight to a3, but the thing I don't like about knight to a3 right now is b5 is too simple. So I'm just going to play a4 first, see what my opponent does, and then play this move knight to a3. My opponent, probably is going to want a castle, play a move like bishop to e7. So when I play knight to a3, he'll have to move the bishop a second time to take my knight. So bishop e7, knight a3. That's not so good. So probably he wants to play a move like knight bd7 here, but then knight a3, I'll take the bishop regardless, and then I'll take the bishop pair. And then I can even play rook takes a3 in some of those lines. The idea that if my opponent plays knight b6, I might have a5, with some dynamic play. So let's just go ahead and play this move knight to a3. And my opponent goes for it. So I think both b takes a3 and rook takes a3 are perfectly fine here, but I've never played rook takes a3 before, so let's just go ahead and do that. Usually I like to play b takes a3, queen c2, bishop b2. Okay. That's probably a mouse slip. Alright, now I feel kind of bad. So in this position... Oh man, I feel really bad. I know he wanted to castle. Wow. Okay, so... When you have more development, you're not really necessarily worried about material on some of these gambit lines. You're more worried about being active, having an active plan. And, the first thing I'm looking at is an idea like d3, c takes d3, rook takes d3, and then putting pressure on this knight after like knight to e5, bishop to g5. It looks like a fairly, simple plan. And I guess today's theme is going to be attacking your opponent's king because obviously my opponent's king is very misplaced on f8. The other advantage that playing d3 has for me is after takes, rook takes, I can consider b3, bishop to a3 if I don't have bishop to g5. So okay, I'll play d3. We'll see what my opponent does. He'll probably take the pawn because at this point he just needs any compensation he can get for not having a castled king. So I guess I kind of apologize here to Mannered Monkey for not exactly having exactly what he wanted, but I'll give him a pawn. What the heck? So here, he resolves the pen, but I can play bishop to g5, which could be kind of annoying. But right now, I kind of want to take advantage of the fact again of my opponent's weak back rank. Maybe a move like bishop to f4 isn't so bad because I already have the threat of bishop d6. But then he has e5. Let's see, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, and if he takes, I have rook d8. But then he has knight d8, and there's no easy checkmate. So let's see, if I play maybe b4 with the idea of bishop a3 and b5, my opponent's going to have to waste some sort of tempo there, and it's not quite clear how he's developing any of his pieces. He might choose king to g8, but again, bishop to a3 is still pretty strong in that line, so that's not such a bad option. So I'll just go ahead and play b4. I think my bishop's better suited on a3 because of my opponent's king than on g5. Or f4. Usually you don't want the bishop on f4 in a fianchetto kind of structure, so that's why I decided to go for this a3 idea and see what I can do. But, okay, we'll see what happens. So, my opponent's going to have a hard time finding places to develop. He might try knight to b6 with the idea of getting to d5, but then I can always consider a move like e4. But, okay, he's trying to get his king safe, and unfortunately for him, he's basically playing down a rook until he can solve that problem. If I were him, I would have tried g6 and king g7. He wastes one fewer move, but, okay, what can you do? So here he plays h6 with the idea of getting his king on h7. So what I'll do is I'll sneak in this move, queen to c2, so that way I can get my other rook in the game, while also, if he plays king to h7, he'll have to pay the price of a discovery. which would not be a good tactic for my opponent. And I'm also threatening if b5 there's no knight to c5 idea, because if bishop takes c5, he would have to play a move like c5 and then open up the diagonal for my light squared bishop. I'm probably not going to play b5 immediately. I probably want to wait till the point where it's most convenient, make my opponent commit some sort of weakness here. But okay, after this I can just play rook on fd1, and even though I'm down a pawn, it's really hard to tell that you're down in any material because of my opponent's development. And I think this precedes the problem of the castling issue. Obviously my opponent would have preferred to have castled, but unfortunately for him, he has the issue that his bishop was going to be bad anyways, so I didn't really think that the take c4 line was that strong for him. So okay, here I'm just going to bring in my other rook. If he ever moves a knight, he's in trouble. Okay, my opponent has a simple pin threat here. Also wants to activate his bishop from c8, so this is a good try, but unfortunately for him, he can no longer move the knight from d7 because of rook d8. So as long as I can resolve the problem of this e4 threat, I'll be fine. So already I'm looking at a move like knight e1 and knight h4. Knight d2 would cut off my rook, so that would give him a tempo to play knight to b6, which is too precious to give away right now. So knight to e1 or knight to h4 is what I'm looking at. Knight to h4 kind of invites g5, knight f5, and then knight b6 is a threat. Although, again, with his poor king safety, he has the issue. So f5 is not actually a bad outpost for my knight, but he doesn't have to play g5. He can just play, any other move, e4 or something. But okay, so that's one option. Is there maybe something more appealing to consider? No knight sack, obviously, on e5. If knight takes e5, that'd be great, but he can play queen takes e5, and there's no material win there. I'm kind of liking this knight h4 idea, because I feel like the knight actually has a future from h4 going to f5, and that's the weakness that a move like e5 creates. The problem with e1 is that afterwards, my best option is to go to f3, and I suspect if he plays e4, that pawn will be there for a while. It'll be an annoying piece to have to play around, but it would also be an annoying piece to have to defend, a pawn to have to defend too. So knight to h4 doesn't seem so bad. And if I can get to f5, then I'm already threatening ideas like knight d6, and my opponent's going to have a lot of weaknesses. So I'm going to go with this idea, knight to h4, e4. Then I could play, do I want to play rook d4, or do I want to play rook d2? I'm liking rook to d4. And he could play e3, but then I have f4. And, I'm taking away the e5 square from my opponent's pieces. So, unfortunately, it looks kind of annoying, but in reality, it's more of a long-term problem for him than it is a short-term problem for me. And let's see what my opponent opts to go for here. He's just got so many problems. I mean, he might as well just try b6 and bishop to a6 instead of this e5 plan, because he created a weak square for my knight to get to, and I think that he might have overlooked this. I mean, g6 probably would make some sense here, so that way he can play king to g7, but he's already using a lot of time, not on the clock, but a lot of time to, on the board, tempi-wise, to play moves like this. So, an option for me if he plays g6 is to go ahead and insert this b5 move I've been looking at, because now the diagonal opens up, and I'm attacking the c6 pawn, and if he takes it, I can take with my a pawn, and, he can't flank out of the bishop. But I don't know. I mean, maybe I do want to wait. Let's see. I'm trying to find the most active plan here to get some sort of initiative to work with, and unfortunately, there's not that much to work with right now. But now that he's opened up this diagonal, it actually might make sense positionally to play bishop to b2 and give up on this b5 plan altogether, because now I'm attacking the pawn, and if the pawn ever moves, well then he's going to have the issue that I'm pinning his knight to his rook, so he will have some tactical problems. And I think right now I just need to point all my forces at his kingside. The bishop on a3 has kind of served its purpose because he wasted a move to play queen to e8. So yeah, let's just go ahead and play bishop to b2 and see what he does here. He might try for knight d. Well, he can't try for knight d5 because bishop takes d5. But he might try to find some sort of tactical problem here. Maybe. Well, there's not even a tactical problem. There's no way to easily to get to b4. So he plays king to g7 with the hopes of getting his rook into the game like I thought he would. But the problem with this move again is that he just doesn't have the flexibility, because now his knight's going to be pinned to his king should he ever decide, to play e4. So maybe a move like knight to f3 is worth looking at now that there's some sort of tactical idea behind it. So knight to f4, knight to f3 rather, e4, rook takes d7 maybe. There's the position's not really, well, knight f3, e4, rook takes d7, bishop takes d7, bishop takes f6 check, king takes f6, queen to c3 check, and he could play king to e7, but then I have queen to e5 check. He can play king to d8. This is getting kind of messy for a position that I'm fairly confident I'm slightly better in. Knight to f3, e4. Not really working out. But okay, I can play a move like rook d6 first to prepare this idea. He has no way to kick my rook. Knight to b6 can just be met with a4. So maybe I'll play this and then knight to f3. So if he takes, I can play... yeah, okay, this makes more sense because now I play knight f3, he can play e4, and then I can play knight d2. I'm not so worried about having this rook d8 option anymore, so I might as well use this battery to the best of my advantage. And it'll be interesting to see how my opponent responds here because he's just got a lot of weaknesses. Okay, so he plays the move queen to e7. So I guess the idea is that if I play knight f3, well, he doesn't even have to play e4, but if he did, I don't have knight d2 anymore. But okay, I think that's the least of his concerns now. I need to have something a little bit more... with a little bit more of a sting, though. Maybe knight to f3. Well, actually, knight to f3, if he plays e4, I can play knight to d4, and if queen takes rook, I can have knight to f5 check, winning the queen. So knight f3 is not ruled out at all. Knight to f3. And I guess I can start pushing the h-pawn. I need to start making moves now. As you guys can see, my clock has been winding down while I've been coming up with ways to try to force a win. And unfortunately, that probably was not the pragmatic decision to make here. I spent a lot of time, and yeah, I've got a better position, but I don't actually have that much to show for it, considering I sacrificed a pawn to get here. Okay, so my opponent has the option of playing e4 and then e3. So I think I'll just play e3, take away some squares from my opponent first. That way I have a little bit more to work with. But my opponent's development's still very unclear. I could go for knight d2, knight to c4, but it's not quite clear what I've achieved there. The knight just is visually more active. So maybe just h4, h5. That's just the easier way to do things. Well, I have to be careful with h5, obviously. I don't want to let knight takes h5, but I need to create some sort of structural deformity. Unfortunately, the only issue that black has is that he's just behind in tempi development. I have to give my opponent credit, even though he had the mouse slip early on. I mean, he's done a very good job trying to hold the position. And, he's definitely made me use a lot of my time, which I was not planning on having to do when he played the move king to f8. So, maybe a mouse slip not gone so bad. We'll look over it after the fact, see if maybe there's something more clear that I could have done. But okay, my opponent has played well regardless of, moves I may have made and missed or, both. All right. So my opponent's in a deep think here. It's still not quite clear what I want to do with my pieces yet. Maybe I play knight to d2 and then knight to e4, take away that square from his pawn, and try to open up the diagonal. I can already consider taking on f6 and then playing a move like f4, which could be kind of interesting because then his king, will be stuck on this diagonal, and I already have bishop takes e5 threats. The pawn is pinned to the knight, which is pinned to the king, so it's one grand old pin. So maybe this is the idea to go for, but of course I don't want my rook hanging on d6, which is the underlying problem with a move like knight to 2. So if I can get my knight to e4 in another way, that would be great, but I don't think that there's such an easy way to do this. I'd have to play like rook d3 first or something. Whoa, okay. So he plays this move, knight to d5, which opens up his king. And, I should be looking more into moves like this. So I can go ahead and just win, the knight and the pawn, and still more active piece play, but then it's just really going up just an exchange. I want to try to find a way to bust him open, but unfortunately that's just not coming to me right now. But after rook takes d5, c takes d5, rook takes d5, I've got enough attackers on e5 that he has to play a move like f6. Then even there, it's not so clear. I don't have a rook takes g6 idea. Knight takes e5, knight takes e5, bishop takes, queen takes, does nothing. So I think I have to go for this exchange sack. I mean, it's not so bad, but now I'm having to make decisions that I shouldn't have had to have made previously. So I suspect he'll take. I mean, he better take. Yeah, this game, I mean, I'm not playing well at all, but I think it's a good psychological lesson. I mean, when my opponent played king to f8, I thought this game was going to be really easy, and then I made a lot of committal moves, rook to d6 being one of them. And now I'm in a position where it's not quite clear what I've achieved. I'm going to be an exchange down. And, you know, the only thing I really have to show for it is a pair of bishops. So, you know, this is a good lesson to take to heart. You know, I have no idea how I'm going to do in this game now, but you know, whenever you're in a position where you're better, don't just try to make things too simplistic. I mean, unfortunately, this is how games are lost. So I'm gonna have to try to figure out a way to try to get some sort of initiative. Maybe queen to c7 at some point to play against the e5 pawn. If you ever play, he can never play e4. That's his problem. But I mean, he's gonna play f6. That's my underlying problem. Is that, well, if he plays f6, actually, g6 becomes weak, so I have knight to h4. He has to play a move like queen to f7, but my rook is protected. Oh, this move cannot be a good move for him. He's opening up a lot of lines here. Very committal, very, very committal. But he does have a queen e1 check. If I do take with the knight first on e5. But I think I still have enough competition to go for it. I mean, the queen e1, I can just put bishop to f1, and I'm doing okay. So I'm just going to go for this. I think this is a mistake. I don't know if it's enough for me to get a point, but I feel like I'm getting closer to some sort of equality. I mean, again, the only edge that I still have is that I'm still ahead in development. But that's it. So he'll probably play knight takes e5 here because I have a lot of discovery threats, or he can play queen to e1, but then I'll play bishop f1, and then he'll play knight takes e5 anyways, just being a transposition. The key is if he plays knight takes e5, I have to know which piece I want to take with bishop or knight. Okay, so I'm going to defend with the bishop. That was a forced move. Okay, if I take with the rook, I have discovery threats. It's going to be in his best interest to take back. But then he doesn't have this f6 option. And his back rank is a lot weaker. So maybe I can make something out of nothing here. So rook takes e5, rook takes e5, bishop takes e5, king to g8. And is there a way for me to break through? He's got... Oh, that's bad news. He's got bishop to h3 ideas. If I play rook takes knight, he can just play bishop h3 immediately. And then trade down because the rook's not hanging on e8. So I have to take with the bishop first. And then maybe oh, he's getting his queen trapped. Oh my goodness. He's going to get his queen trapped. I'm going to play bishop to c3 next. This is the move. So he has to defend the check. And then I'm just going to play bishop to c3. And then his queen is stuck. His queen is stuck. Oh my goodness. I found the needle in the haystack. Oh my goodness. Alright. Well, a couple lessons for me today. First lesson being, you know, just because your opponent mouse slips doesn't necessarily mean that the game is over. You still have to do the game winning. And lesson number 2 is to not do Chess Summit videos after 10 p.m. because I am exhausted right now. Let's go over what happened here. No, this is not what I want. Because I think there's got to be a better way for me to play. So okay, we had this structure, and I was sold that he was not gonna. I thought he wanted to go for a Catalan because he was playing these moves really quickly, And if you're going to take on c4, you would really like to have this bishop, have the option of going to f5. I mean, a lot of players like to play b5 and bishop b7, but like, okay, you want to keep your opponent on their toes. Okay, so I played a4, and here I decided to take with the rook, which is something I don't do, and then he played king to f8. I played d3, which is seemingly kind of premature. I mean, in all honesty, I prefer the b takes a3 plan, just because it's a little bit more straightforward. Rook to b1, queen to c2, bishop b2. But okay, I could still play queen to c2 here, and ask him how he's going to defend this pawn. In fact, I think that that's the easiest way to go about doing things. Queen c2, knight b6, a5. I'm going to win on c4. Queen c2. Yeah, there's no other way to defend the pawn, obviously, because knight e5 is not possible because of knight takes e5. So again, this is, the first move after he plays king to f8, a mouse slip. Psychologically, I'm already thinking attack, 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 attack. This is the wrong mindset. And king f8 is just it's a small plus for me in the position, but it's not game defining, unfortunately. So queen to c2, would have been a much more straightforward move. I mean, it's not a magical move or anything. It's not even that hard to find. It's a common idea to go about winning the c4 pawn, especially in open Catalans. But psychologically, I was so worried about winning that the first thing I did was I gave him material to go ahead and try to get some initiative. And I think that this was already a pragmatically incorrect decision. So queen to e7. I played b4 here. If he takes on b4, I can play bishop to a3. That was my idea. So I'm getting space on the queen side, and so far I think my sacrifice is justified. I thought here, whoops, it's not letting me go back. He should have played g6 instead of king g8 and then king g7. I like that more for him, but he still went way back. All right, so here instead of king g8, he should have played g6. But the problem with g6 is I have bishop to b2, so he's got a lot of issues here. h6, queen to c2, queen to e8, good decision. Rook to d1, this felt very natural. Then he played e5, and the problems really started to begin here. If I had played knight to d2, would that have changed things with the idea of going to e4, so he has to play e4? Yeah, and this was maybe another idea. Remember when I was saying, like, oh yeah, he creates an outpost on f5, I was like, okay, he can play g6, but he's creating a weakness, but that actually made his structure even stronger, even though this diagonal opened up. So I think maybe I really, didn't really consider knight d2 that much. I think knight d2 deserves a lot more consideration, because after moves like e4, he's just creating a weakness for me. Rook to e3, rook to d4. There are many ways to win this pawn. So psychologically, again, I'm so focused on winning. So I'm 2100, and I've seen grandmaster games where players who are slightly better try to milk an advantage. And so this is a great lesson, I think, for everyone, because I don't really do I don't really talk about chess and psychology, but it's definitely a factor. So he played queen to e7, and I'm not even looking at this move knight to d5. I'm just so fine-tuned on attacking him that I haven't even, I didn't even look at this. I mean, fortunately for me, I get some play, and I saw this queen e1 check, and I only saw this idea of bishop to c3 after I made the move. I mean, if I play bishop to c3 now, he's got knight to f3, so I do have to take this guy. I think he has, based on what we've found here, he has to take this bishop. Rook takes bishop, bishop to h3, queen to c4. And, let's see. Okay, it's a 4 versus 3 on the king side, but he's got the only, winnable side. He's 2 versus 1 on the king side, the queen side, which is a much easier task than a 4 versus 3. So, after all of the attacking that I did, I come out with maybe a equal or maybe even, harder side of equal endgame. So, this is a critical moment, and my opponent just missed that I had bishop to c3. I mean, kudos to my opponent after the king slip. I mean, he played very calmly. He made very few mistakes up until this point. But I think that this was a good lesson for today because, I'm tired. So, I just kind of wanted to go for a win and then have some sort of, cool dynamic tactic to show. But okay, my opponent made a mouse slip, and then, it was just attack, 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 make the most out of everything, go, go, go. But it doesn't have to be that way. Chess is chess because it's hard. So, worry about building your small advantages. I had plenty of opportunities in this game, I think, to milk my advantage of him not being able to have, proper king safety. But once he had the king safety, I had nothing because I had given him material, and I was... I hadn't really worried about the fundamentals. So that's today's lesson. Focus on playing the best chess that you can play, not necessarily on forcing a position to give you what you want. So until Tuesday's article, this is Canada Master Isaac Steinkamp signing off from the Chess Summit Network.